With our irrigation system now roughed in and functioning, it's time now to start moving in our sand. Now, I've got 31 tonne here of what I would call a sandy loam. Now, I've got this pile here separated because it was the last of the pile and it did have a few little rocks and pebbles and stuff in it, like you can see there. So not going to be a huge problem today for me. In fact, I'll probably use this pile first and get it towards the bottom. If this was top dress, it would be a different story. Now, the product I've got is what let's call a sandy loam. It's a river sand. It's a sandy loam. It's probably somewhere in the vicinity of what I would call a 70-30. Now, you've probably heard about USGA and 70-30s and 80-20s and all these different things. And as I've mentioned before, what that means is, in this content here, 70% of what is here is sand and the other 30% is silt. So that gives us two things. It gives us pretty good drainage and it gives us some nutrient holding ability with the silt content. So that's going to be what we're going to use for our Sir Grange. So Sir Grange is a Zoysia through lawn solutions, and I'm really, really pumped and keen to try that grass. So very, very important that when we use a product like Sir Grange, it's a little bit like a slow growing cooch, and it does really appreciate you putting in the effort at the beginning to get the best out of it going forward, because you spend all your time preparing the ground and laying the turf, it's going to reward you with a really, really nice lawn. Now, what I thought I'd do for something a little bit different today, before we start just moving sand and doing all this sort of stuff, let's just do a little cheeky pH test and see what we're dealing with here. So although Sir Grange Zoysia can handle a truly wide pH range from somewhere around about 5.5, which is heading towards a very acidic scale, right the way through to 7.5, which is heading into our alkaline range, I'm just a little bit curious to see what this sand is going to do. So I've been down the hardware store and I've grabbed one of these chemical style test kits. Now I don't fully recommend the probe style ones with a little gauge. I just don't find them overly accurate compared to a chemical test. So let's just do a little test now, see what we're dealing with, and then we'll get a bit of an idea of when we lay this turf down, what sort of nutrients we might need to add to give it the best start. So these soil pH test kits are very, very simple to use. In fact, they're more simple to use than they are to open the packet. Righto, so inside here you will find a couple of things. Number one, you will find some dye indicator and some testing powder. Then you'll also get, this here is our pH scale. So the colour of our sample should line up to one of those, which will indicate what our pH is going to be. Now, this is our little mixing plate, and this is our little stirring stick. Now, I know that they do suggest that if you actually happen to be digging out a section of your lawn or like a sample to test, let's say, they do recommend using something made of stainless steel to avoid getting any false readings. In our case, it's loose sand. We only need the size of half a teaspoon. I can just get a bit on that. I don't need to worry about that today. So I'll get a little bit of sand from the pile there now. We'll put it on here and we'll see what we come up with. So here's our little sample here. It's probably far too much. We don't need that much. We probably get rid of most of that. And we'll just leave ourselves with this little bit here. Now, if your sample happens to have a leaf or a twig or a bit of something like that in it, remove it, because we're really only looking to test the soil itself. So in our case here, we're looking pretty good. Now, all we need to do from memory, I think it's a few drops. Yeah, so small sample, half a teaspoon, which I'd say that's probably still a bit much. Let's halve it again. That's all we need, that bit there. Okay, so half a teaspoon and a few drops of the liquid, which is this stuff here. Ooh. From there on in, we'll just sort of mix it together. That's pretty well mixed through. Now we've got dust. Okay. Put a bit of this white powder on here now, and the powder in theory should change to the colour of our pH. At this stage, it looks like we're sitting somewhere around 7.5 towards 8. So we're on the alkaline side of life here. So what we will actually do is we'll probably, as this grass settles in, we'll probably start treating this with a little bit of sulfur just to start reducing that pH down, get it back into that neutral, heading towards a little slightly bit of acidic soil conditions, but still, it's just interesting to do that test. I'm looking at that now. It is probably more towards, yeah, probably 7.5 to 8. I'm pretty confident that's about where it's at. So we can work on correcting that over time. You'll notice that we've got a little bit of broadleaf weed here. So I do now need to treat this with a little bit of Roundup. Now, had this have been more of a grassy weed, so some kikuyu or cooch or buffalo or whatever the case may be, I would have had to been on this a lot earlier than today. So in fact, we're spraying this out now. I'd be very surprised if any of this actually can push through, 150 mil of sand plus some new turf. If it was grass, it'd be a different story. So we'll hit this now. By the time I get to this section with the machine and bringing the sand in, it'll have absorbed enough chemical, and I really, really doubt that it's going to be an issue. Now, around all the sprinklers, I've left them deliberately open like this so I can pack them around with the sand, and that means should I ever need down the track to do any maintenance on those sprinklers, it's much easier to work with sand than it is to work with wet, heavy clay. So that's the thought process there. So from here on in now, it's just a matter of getting our sand brought in. So we'll use our Toro 525. Once again, huge shout out to Valley Outdoors and Lawn Culture Australia for supplying that machine. It makes all these projects that I'm doing for you guys a lot easier. So thank you very much for that. Well, without further ado, let's bring some sand in. We'll start leveling it out. I need to stress also, you don't want to rush this stuff. The more time you spend preparing for your turf to go down, the better it's going to reward you, the smoother it's going to lay out. It's not necessarily going to be perfectly level. You could spend all day having this perfect to a millimetre. There will be slight differences in each roll of turf, but we've got to eliminate and do our part. So spend the time, get it right, because you don't really want to do it again, especially when you're spending money on turf. Turf's an expensive investment, and you want to be sure that you're doing the right thing by it. So I've just gone around all the sprinklers now. I just wanted to pack them in with a bit of water and a bit of sand just to sort of get them at about the level that I want them at. And the water does a good job of just moving this sand around the pipes and through the risers and so forth, just to get everything sort of held into place and firm. Now, although these sprinklers are in full operation, they're still not automatic at this stage, although the valves are in and stuff I mentioned in last week's video. I'm just waiting on a mate who's an electrician to come and install a power point out there. Then we'll mount the controller, we'll hook up all the cables, we'll make it fully automatic. Now, these are sort of roughly adjusted in now. All these sprinklers spray generally where I want them to spray. However, once I've got all the sand down here, I'll fine tune that system in. While it's all this sticky clay, it doesn't take too long till you're walking on about 4 inches of mud. So my thought process is we'll get all this sand in, smooth it out, level it out, then we'll be able to fine tune the sprinklers without carrying mud everywhere. So from here on in, we're just gonna bulk move a heap of sand in. It's gonna work section at a time. I'm not gonna get ahead of myself, and we'll get this area prepped for turf. Well, I'm really happy how this whole area is coming together. It's still pretty soft underfoot, and that's to be expected. My main mission was simply just to get it in a basic sort of a level. What we're going to do now though is it's going to track over this with that dingo a few times. Now, it's going to just help settle it down. It's not going to compact it down and make it unusable. It's just going to firm it up. It's going to expose a few high and low spots, and from there we can just sort of fine tune as we go. Now, I'm doing this section here before we change direction because I don't want to be actually turning and screwing on this, because obviously that's not going to help us with our levels. So I'll run over this area here now, track roll this in, then I'll start bringing material straight down and working my way back to the top. And then at the end of that, I'll track roll it that way as well. We are due to get a rain event tomorrow, and I don't really have very good history when it comes to this sort of thing. So I'm hoping that it's not the sort of rain event that we got when I put my Tiff Tuff in, but I don't really have that sort of control. So the race is on. I like chipping away at this sort of stuff slowly, so we'll just keep chipping away. Tomorrow we should get a bit of rain, hopefully just enough to settle it nicely. If we need to sort of tickle it up again after that, so be it. But I'm hoping by the end of today, we'll be fairly close to getting it to a point where I'm happy to lay some turf. Well, that has worked an absolute treat. It's packed it down really, really nicely. And all it's really going to leave me to do is a little bit of raking, nothing too dramatic. Once that's all smoothed out, that will really start to show any high and low spots that we need to correct. There shouldn't be too many. There's maybe a little spot there, a little bit there, but once we start raking and just taking our time, it really should start looking pretty good. So we'll come down here now. I'm going to start, as I said before, now as I bring the sand down, I'll start working from the house up the ramp there. So the sand will go to about the lawn's technically to the pink marks there. That sprinkler's a bit out of whack, but it doesn't matter, it's only a garden. Yeah, so we've got this bit here to go. And then we'll sort of fluff it around with the rake. Pray that the rain isn't too strong, helps it settle down nicely, and very shortly, we'll get some turf in. pretty happy with how that came out. Out of that 30, I think it was 31 tonne of sand in total, probably only 6, I'd say, left, probably 5 or 6 tonne left. Although my calculations are correct, what I didn't factor in was, as we got closer towards the fence at the back, there was more area to fill, hence I would have needed more sand. So lucky I had to order the amount I ordered. There'll be plenty there left to top dress, and there may even be a tiny bit left to start the front. But for the moment, just going to now rake over this area. There is a few more sort of highs and lows, nothing too dramatic. I'm just going to level this all out. Tonight or tomorrow there's rain due. We'll let the rain settle this down a little bit more, and we'll catch back up after the rain. Well, that's about all we can do for now. And to be quite honest, if I had some turf, I'd probably lay it right now. This little tool here, one of my bosses when I was an apprentice actually made this. It's very crude but very effective, way back in 1996, so it stood the test of time. It is the best leveling tool. It's basically just a broomstick. I don't know if that might have started out life as a skirting board or something, but I'll probably get crucified if I say it's 2 feet long, so let's call it half a metre, 50 centimetres, probably 4 centimetres that way. And it just does a really, really good job, as you can see. There's not much more we can do at this point in time. We do still have to adjust those sprinklers and fine tune them. I've had enough for today, so we will do that, but it just won't be right now. So what we might do, if I wrap it up now, I wrap it up now. If I don't, I'll see you in a minute. Just as the weatherman had predicted, yesterday was quite a wet day and it continued on overnight. So I just want to have a quick look in the rain gauge, see how much rain we actually got today. Then we might wander down to Mum and Dad's and see if that rain has caused any washouts or any damage to our sand. And I really, really hope that it hasn't. Okay, so we've got a full tube, so 25.5, we'll call it 26 mil overnight to the top of the jar, of the tube. So let's have a wander down and we'll see what's happening with the sand. I'm just trying to shield myself a little bit from the wind, so I hope we don't get too much interference. But for 25 mils of rain, this section has settled down really nicely. I don't want to walk on it, but it is nice and firm. It has packed down really, really nicely. No real washouts to speak of. Settled really well. There's a little bit, looks to be over there, but it's not actually a really big deal. Even here, nothing has, I covered that drain, there was a drain there, I've just put a bit of shade cloth over it. It's pretty good. We'll just wander around here, just walk on the side of the sand here. Yeah, so a little tiny bit over there, but seriously, for 25 mils of rain, that's probably done it the trick. It's looking really, really, really good. So all I need to do now is give this a measure. I won't do it today, it's just too wet. Just to get, I think it's about 110, 115 square meters. I just want to quickly double check that, and then we'll get our Sir Grange Zoysia in. Anyway guys, let's wrap it up here for today. It's too windy. If you've liked this video, be sure to subscribe, share it with your friends, and it helps the channel grow. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next time on the Aussie Lawn.